Welcome to my channel. So today's episode has to do with compost, and this compost pile is about 1 month old, and originally it was predominantly oak leaves and a few other minor materials. And you can see that the oak leaves are starting to break down significantly. They're much more brittle and wet than they were prior. Easy to break down in my hands. This is how the oak leaves started. Okay, it's much harder to break. Okay, it's much more, the lignin fibers and stuff are much tighter. I can't just break it apart and snap it and cause it to fail. It wants to go back to its original shape. Okay, whereas the oak leaves that are left in here are starting to break down. This one's still green because it's newer, but the original oak leaves that were in here and the original leaf structures that were in here are starting to break down. Turned all black. So this is good stuff. I've taken most of the stick mass out. I've still got a few sticks like this that are getting tossed out. But I would consider this compost ready after a month, and I've turned it probably a dozen times or more. I'm going to turn it one more time today, and then I'm going to sieve out the compost and sieve out the larger mass materials. The cardboard obviously took longer to break down than anticipated, but it's in large chunks, and I anticipated that because I kept adding cardboard and newspaper. You can see that because the newspaper wasn't broken down into strips or anything, that it's still readable, and this has been added as we went. So I didn't anticipate that breaking down, but it's part of the process. I believe the pile is in good condition, and after I turn it this time, this will be the last turn, and then I'll sieve the material out, the fine material out, and take the really heavy rough stuff and throw it into the pile in the back, where I'm putting into swales all along. And you can see that I'm putting the rough material into the swales, so that way it will decompose faster and it'll act like a sponge. And then I'll take the finer materials and I'll put it up in my area up there, which is acting more like a swamp because of the amount of clay that's in the soil. And you can see this is water standing in clay, and there is some sand in there, but there's not enough sand to get the water to percolate down. There's still too much clay mass. But I'll show you what I call my little swamp. This is where the swamp ends in this bed, this growing bed, and this bed is probably 3 feet deep, full of mulch and organic material. And this trough right here has a huge amount of clay mass in it. It goes all the way around. You can see that the stuff that's in there is growing really well because of the extra water that it's receiving, but it took a long time to germinate because the conditions aren't right for germination. It's too wet. You see the standing water there. You see a crack in the wall. There's a retaining wall to the property that's above us, and that retaining wall is leaking water out, and it's leaking water down into this section, and then this little retaining wall right here is holding the water back. And I've punched holes through these blocks to get water to pass through, but those holes have clogged. And so I put organic material in here. You can see it's just turned into a little swamp every time it rains. But it's getting better. This used to all be like a swamp. It used to all be fully wet, full of water every time it rained. And we had some significant rain recently. And it's not a swamp, and it's not boggy This is cocoa coir. This cocoa coir I attribute to a lot of the work that's happening. You can see funguses growing on this stick, and I added funguses, and added beans and peas and garlic and all kinds of different things to try and get things to pop and start absorbing the water out, transpiring the water out. You can see this is pretty marsh-like conditions. So what I did was I put in daikon radish to penetrate the clay material, and I put in a bunch of lentils and things, and then I put in mint. And the reason I put in mint is mint loves standing water and running water. It loves water, so mint should grow through here and should start taking over these zones and really stratify the area and take up a lot of that moisture and grow. Good stuff.